Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi is the Democrat of Illinois and a member of that subcommittee investigating the federal response to coronavirus pandemic, and he joins me now. Congressman, I wonder if you can just start by laying out the sort of key findings of your committee in this report.
Well, thank you, Chris. Not only did the Trump administration not prepare for COVID, even when they knew about it, not only did they pursue quack solutions to COVID, such as getting everyone to take hydroxychloroquine, but they actively silenced truth tellers in the government and scientists who were trying to give briefings to the public, and they politically interfered with the judgment and decision-making and guidance given by the CDC. You mentioned the testing guidance, where they basically altered testing guidance in August 2020 to reduce the testing of asymptomatic people, even though that was contrary to science. Dr. Deborah Birx said the reason was to obscure how rapidly COVID was spreading through our society. And of course, that had deadly consequences.
Yeah, the whole idea was to, he says it there, actually. You don't have to impute this to him. He doesn't like the fact the numbers are going up because he thinks it reflects poorly on his political prospects. And the way to do that is to just stop testing so that the numbers will be lower so that he has a better chance of re-election, which seemed to guide, as your report found, and as we saw in real time, guide everything at every step.
That's right. But of course, COVID ultimately shows up in hospitals. It shows up in infections. It shows up in deaths. And so regardless of whether Donald Trump decides to test less for COVID, that doesn't mean that COVID goes away. And unfortunately, it led to perhaps thousands of more deaths than would otherwise have been the case had we tested asymptomatic people, quarantined people who had COVID, and of course, treated those away from those who had not had COVID.
I want to just go through some of the findings here just to put them all out. That they blocked CDC briefings and media appearances. We know that happened with Dr. Nancy Messonnier after she warned people that schools are about to shut down and was never heard from again, even though she was right. Sought to sidestep the CDC in finalizing guidance. They weakened CDC's testing guidance, as you noted. They instructed career scientists to destroy evidence of political interference. They pressured the FDA to authorize ineffective coronavirus treatments. We know from whistleblowers resigning that that's the case. This, I think, is the sickest, darkest, most despicable episode. When Scott Atlas was hired into the White House and championed a herd immunity strategy, in which the solution was to get everybody sick with COVID, have the weak die off, and the survivors have antibodies and have it over and done with. And if that had happened, we would have had hundreds of thousands of more deaths than we had because state, local governments kept social distancing guidelines, tried to keep people alive until a vaccine came. But what did you discover about that episode?
Well, what we discovered is that Scott Atlas talked about this on Fox News. And really, after he did that, he was hired by President Trump to help lead our COVID pandemic response. And as you mentioned, this herd immunity theory would have led to hundreds of thousands, if not millions more deaths. It was enunciated in something called the Great Barrington Declaration, which, by the way, a lot of these quacks still believe in. Mm-hmm. And they are not remorseful about it. They don't apologize for it. They still think that this is the way to go. And I think people should know that as they make choices about who to hold accountable and whether to elect people back to office who still subscribe to that nonsense.
You guys found, Dr. Deborah Birx at this point is sort of at her wit's end with these people, with Atlas and the herd immunity folks. There's an email from her in August of 25th of 2020 when Atlas is holding a roundtable on herd immunity at the White House. I can't be a part of this with these people who believe in herd immunity. They are a fringe group without grounding in epidemics, public health, or on the ground common sense experience. I'm happy to go out of town or whatever gives the White House cover for Wednesday. This is her basically sidestepping it, although she doesn't come out at the time to blow the whistle on this.
Right. And also Francis Collins, by the way, wrote an email around that same time saying that we need to do a takedown of this theory publicly. However, neither of them did that. And that was in my opinion, regrettable. I think that it would have helped had they come out publicly and said what they felt. But on the other hand, truth tellers were silenced throughout the government. It wasn't just the two of them. And I think that this is what happens when you have politics infecting science, Chris. When you have politics guiding what science should otherwise be dictating in terms of guidance, judgments, and decision-making with regard to our health, that is a very troubling issue.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, who served on that subcommittee, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.